The Midnight Driver. Prologue. In the small town of Maplewood, an urban legend had persisted for generations. It was said that if you drove down the old highway at midnight, you might encounter the ghostly figure of a woman in a white dress, desperately seeking a ride. Those who dared to stop were never seen again. Chapter 1. The Dare. Alex, Ben, and Chloe were high school seniors, always looking for a thrill. One night, bored and seeking excitement, they decided to test the legend. "It's just a story," Ben said, revving the engine of his car. "Let's prove it once and for all." Alex, always the skeptic, agreed. Chloe, though nervous, didn't want to seem scared in front of her friends. So at precisely midnight, they set off down the old highway. Chapter 2. The Encounter. The road was dark and deserted, the trees looming ominously on either side. They drove in silence, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves. Chloe checked her phone, the screen illuminating her worried face. "Are we really doing this?" she asked. Ben smirked. "Don't chicken out now," he said. Suddenly, Alex pointed ahead. "Look!" he shouted. There, in the middle of the road, was a woman in a white dress. She stood still, her face obscured by her long hair. Ben slowed the car to a stop, his bravado fading. "Do we help her?" Chloe whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Alex hesitated. "We have to," he said. "What if she's real?" Chapter 3. The Ride. Ben rolled down the window. "Do you need a ride?" he called out. The woman slowly approached the car, her movements almost unnatural. She nodded and climbed into the back seat without a word. Chloe shivered as the temperature inside the car seemed to drop. "Where to?" Ben asked, trying to sound casual. The woman remained silent, pointing straight ahead. They drove in tense silence, the atmosphere growing heavier with each passing mile. Chloe glanced back, but the woman's face was still hidden by her hair. Alex checked his phone. "We're almost at the end of the highway," he said. "What now?" Chapter 4. The Revelation. As they neared the town limits, the woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "This is where I died," she said. Ben slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, turning around. The woman lifted her head, revealing hollow, empty eyes. "I was killed here years ago, and now, so are you." Chapter 5. The Escape. Panic set in. Ben tried to start the car, but the engine sputtered and died. The temperature continued to drop, frost forming on the windows. Chloe screamed as the woman reached out, her hand passing through the seat towards her. Alex fumbled for the door handle, yanking it open. "Run!" he shouted. They scrambled out of the car, sprinting down the highway. The woman's wail echoed behind them, chilling them to the bone. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of the town limits, gasping for breath. The car and the ghostly woman were nowhere to be seen. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The friends never spoke of that night again, but the memory haunted them. They had encountered something beyond explanation, something that defied logic. The legend of the Midnight Driver continued, but now they knew it was more than just a story. Epilogue. Years later, Chloe returned to Maplewood for a high school reunion. She visited the old highway, now overgrown and forgotten. At midnight, she stood at the spot where they had picked up the ghostly woman. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment, she thought she heard a faint, familiar wail. She hurried back to her car, driving away as fast as she could, vowing never to return.